Hi everyone, Luke here from Fragmento Films. Welcome to the Pictorialist. On today's episode, we're going to have a little look at what's been going on in the camera world, but we're mostly going to be looking at upgrading. I've been really fortunate to grab some new kit recently, but none of my decisions were made lightly, and I want to talk through some of my process, so we'll be going through that right after this. Okay, so I'm super lucky because I've just managed to upgrade a lot of my equipment. It's taken me a long time of saving and trading ins and upgrading, but I finally managed to get myself a B cam, which was a Panasonic S5, and I managed to get myself an upgraded PC so that I can edit 4K footage smoothly. And I've been very lucky this last few months for getting sort of equipment. But I basically made a decision that there were certain things that I thought about for a long time, and it was about time I made a trade in. Now, I've briefly touched upon how it can you can sort of feel like you're keeping up with the Joneses when you look at influencers, and that is very much the case a lot of the time. But really, what you want to be looking at when you're upgrading your kit is, do you really need to upgrade? A lot of the time, like I said in the previous episode, most cameras now are really highly capable, and it can be very easy to get caught in the zeitgeist of whatever the latest and greatest spec is. You'll see certain terms get thrown around like 8K, 6K, and 120 frames a second. And a lot of these things they're valid, but it can be hard to see the forest for the trees sometimes when you're looking so closely at the specs. In reality, there's so many great cameras out there. Fuji have the amazing X-T3 and X-T4. Sony have amazing cameras that don't cost £6,000. The Sony A7 III is still out there. It's a previous generation camera, and it's still an amazing camera. For me personally, my process for upgrading mostly revolves around like the bang for buck factor, and I'm hoping to do more kit reviews that you'll find on my YouTube channel. And a lot of those reviews I've noticed do revolve around having a bang for buck, which is basically getting the most performance for like a reasonable price. And that doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to get the best, best of the best with honors sir performance, but you might have something that is like like a jack of all trades that can do everything well. Even though it's not the best in any one particular area, it can do a lot of things well. And that's been my experiences with these Lumix cameras. Um, it took me quite a long time to upgrade to the S1 because I was very much caught in the reads about the autofocus, for example. And it's true. The autofocus system on this, which is a contrast detect autofocus system, is not as good as a Sony or a Canon. And I do think Panasonic probably will move over to phase detection the next time around. But for now, we've got these contrast detect cameras, and that put me off for a while. And I really regret that it took me so long to finally make the jump, because I found for photos they're actually really competent. For video, I'm using autofocus now, but you're probably going to notice with these cameras, if you was outside, you'd see pulsing and all sorts of things. Didn't really bother me. I found that these cameras were just a really great jack of all trades. And what really pushed me to upgrade was I was using Micro Four Third cameras, which are amazing, and if you give them enough light, they do a really great job. But unfortunately, with my G9, for example, I was getting more and more into wildlife photography, and I love landscape photography as well. And there's two problems there. Well, the my favourite time of day to go out shooting landscape is either early morning or or late evenings. I'm looking for those twilights. Um, that's a problem with Micro Four Third sensors. It is true that the image stabilization allows you to compensate to some degree, but there's only so far you can actually push them. It was even more of a problem for wildlife. I found I had a Panasonic 100 to 300 lens on, which is like a 200 to 600 lens. So it was had amazing reach, but when it started to get dark, I was really struggling to get photos of birds. But more importantly, these cameras started to become a bit of an issue when shooting weddings. So my GH5S was pretty good because it was actually really competent in low light. It had a dual native ISO or ISO, which basically means it's essentially like two sensors in one to deal with one to deal with like an ISO range of like 100 to I think it was like 80 to 400, something like that. I can't remember now, but basically at a certain amount, it will switch over, and a new sensor board will sort of take over, and it will work better in low light. As amazing as the GH5S was, and as amazing as even the photo mode was, it was only 10 megapixels. Now, as my business is growing, I'm finding I have fallen more and more into the hybrid sort of category where photography is now equally as important to me as video. And I thought for a really, really long and hard time about what would be the best choice for me. And I looked and compared lots and lots of specs, and I ended up going for the S1. It's big. It's a big camera. It's a heavy camera, and it's contrast detect autofocus, which is what actually stopped me getting it for so long. But the features on it were just amazing, and I'm still drawing very much towards film because that was my background, and I just think these cameras are kind of unparalleled for what they offer in film. Yes, they have definitely been bettered by the Canon R5, Sony A1, A7S III, but I managed to get a great deal on my S1. I got it for 1200 pre-owned, and it was almost like new condition. And that camera has like anamorphic support. It has lots of different flexible video options, and it's got more upgrade options on the way. So I've tried to buy something that's really versatile, and I found the autofocus was really good as well. But I've basically found it's a really good all rounder. Problem I had there was I had upgraded to an S1, still had one micro four thirds camera. The reason I'm always trying to get two cameras that are the same sort of mount if possible is for redundancy. If I'm going to photograph a wedding or something like that, or film a wedding, I want two cameras to be pretty much the same. Now, this worked out really perfect for me because I was a bit gutted when the S5 came out at first, and then I realised there are some big differences between the cameras, but they use the same sensor, which is really handy, and the S5 is actually smaller than the GH5. This is amazing for me because I was thinking about getting two S1s, but it is a heavy camera, and I do like to do photography and film for leisure as well as corporate and promotional. So what this allowed me to do is have a camera that really complemented my other camera, and I'm going to get very similar image results out of. It also means if I take this on a job, I've got instant redundancy. I've got two cameras where I can use the lenses from both cameras and have that amazing sort of like Lumix sort of like color quality and all those really versatile video options as well. So these choices weren't made lightly. I had been saving a long time. I've always actually traded up my gear. Um, and what I actually did was I can trace back all my camera systems to Sony a Sony ZV-1. I think it was a tiny little camera that took mini DV tapes. Sold that, got a Canon 5D Mark II. Found it was really a headache to have a separate recorder. And there's an argument there for having redundancy, but I've found more and more it's better just to get everything as good as I can in camera. And on certain jobs, I will always bring a second recorder for redundancy. Now I traded that in. I got a GH4 because of the video options, and then eventually I've gone through like a GH4, G7, G9. So I'm not going out and just spending a big amount of cash. What I'm doing is I'm trying to strike while the iron's hot, so I'm getting the best trading value. And I was really lucky with the S5. It was a camera I was planning on getting much later in the year, but they had a £400 trading bonus on it, and the bundle also come with the Sigma 24 to 70 art lens. So it just felt like the right time, and I do feel there's been no announcements of a GH6, but I do think Panasonic are probably getting ready to release another camera. Other companies are falling over themselves, and it's really ridiculous. So I guess one of my tips would be, taking away from that whole sort of spiel, is knowing when the best time is to actually get rid of your kit. It's okay to. So I love my Panasonic kit, but if I ever wanted to completely change systems or completely upgrade to something new, you've got to know, number one, is it are you really going to benefit? In my case, I really did benefit from having the more capable low light performance, which I did a lot of tests before I finally thought, this I need to upgrade. Number two is keeping a close eye on how your camera's sort of doing in the market, because when new stuff is released, the market trade aftermarket prices are going to fluctuate, and not always for the best. If you leave it too long, you might end up losing out on some, on a good trading offer, or even a really good deal. Um, but if you're using kit that you're getting really, really good results out of, you best to stick with it, because the cameras almost become like a fashion accessory. They're almost the same as like mobile phones now, where they're stumbling over each other. In fact, Sigma have just announced a new camera, the FPL, which is super, super weird. Um, Sony have got rumored to, Sony and Canon have apparently got working on 100 megapixel cameras, which I really don't doubt. And it's hard to know when is the right time to go in and purchase a camera. And my advice for you is, it's not an accessory, it's a tool. And there's tons of great cameras out there. My Panasonic S1, it's a 24 megapixel. Cameras that are coming out now are like 50 megapixel plus. It's to me, that's kind of off-putting. I actually quite like the sort of, for personal preference, like between 20 to 36 is really good. But like 50 megapixels, you have to then take into account how much space it's going to take up. There's some clear benefits. There's always benefits. You can say, well, I need 8K because it's 8K and it's going to be an amazing resolution and I'm going to be able to crop in and do. Yes, you can do all of that, but you might find that in practice you're not actually doing that, and it's taking up a hell of a lot of room to even do that. So you're going to have to invest then into more hardware. Whereas if you buy a previous generation or get pre-owned, get yourself a Sony A7 III, Fujifilm X-T4, Panasonic GH5S. These cameras are going to allow you to use your budget much more wisely. What I was really able to do the last few months was, it's definitely cost me quite a bit of money, but because I've been trading in and looking for deals and not just getting the latest and greatest thing that gets sent to every single influencer and YouTuber, I've not been constrained to these crazy high budgets, lights that cost like $1,000, and people, and it just always makes me laugh when they sort of say, oh, these are quite cheap. And it's like, they are cheap in relevant to film lights, but I wouldn't be using those lights if I was on a film production anyway. It's unlikely. And I was really lucky to get some like really great lights, which I'm hoping to do a review of on my YouTube channel, and get lots of other really, really good equipment that's ultimately going to feed into my how my films and photos look. If I just get a camera and a really expensive lens, all I've got is a camera and an expensive lens. If I've not invested in my lights, sound equipment, and lots of other things that are part of that creative process, then ultimately it doesn't matter what camera I use, because the camera's not going to do all of the work for you. It is just a tool. So you got to weigh up what it is you're buying, and if you really need it. You'll probably actually end up finding that, because you want to keep such a close eye on when the best time to actually trade in your equipment if at all, that other pieces of equipment become way more valuable, because you're probably going to hold on to things like lights a lot longer. You might invest in a lens system that you're going to hold on to for a long period of time. Mics are absolutely fundamental, for any filmmaker. And if you break down, one exercise I really like to do is have a budget and then break down get, what else I can get with that budget. And I touched upon this in the last episode as well, which is basically, If you was going to get a Sony A1, break that down and see what else you can get. So if you are thinking of upgrading, really make sure that it is definitely needed in order to help you as a creator and your business grow. I still, like in the last episode, still suffer from gear acquisition syndrome, and I'm absolutely obsessed. So it can be really difficult to know what really need. And I've definitely got more than a few purchases that I didn't really need to make. But I've got better and better at being a lot more selective with what I buy now, and finding, once you get into the habit of trying to find good deals, it's actually quite rewarding once you've got something that really does have that bang for buck factor. Um, and don't forget as well, you want to be upgrading your skills, so invest in yourself. Um, I've signed up to some courses on Udemy. Uh, Basically, I want to learn some kinetic text. I want to get better at After Effects. Um, and I'm looking at some other things as well. But you constantly want to be upgrading yourself. That's how you ultimately get the best use out of the tool that you're using. So there's a lot to the world of upgrading, and it can be very, very daunting. But literally, if you've got your head in the videos, listening to video after video after video, have a bit of a break. And if you've already got a camera, go out and do something with it and do something creative and test it. When I finally traded in my G9, I did a few tests around dark just to see how it was holding up in the sort of darker sort of light hours, and I found I could push it a bit further. But I ultimately found that I thought to myself, if I was on a wedding now and I was doing photographs and it was dark, these photos aren't going to look great. I can't have that. I need to upgrade. So it was out of necessity. And then fundamentally, like I said earlier, I found I needed to make sure I had kit that closely matched each other. And this S5 is amazing because it's so light that I can use it on a gimbal without breaking my back. So I do see my S1 as my sort of A camera because it's like a tank. It's so reliable as well. It just feels really well. The feel of it feels like a step up from the S5, and that's not a slur on the S5. The S5 is an amazing all-round camera, and I actually think I'll probably end up using the S5 more because for leisure use. So I'm probably going to get used more, but I see the S1 as the camera that it's serious business. So if I'm going to film for a client, that is going to be my A camera. I always weigh these type of things up. You want to keep an eye on my YouTube channel. In fact, if you're watching this on YouTube, it would mean a lot if you sort of subscribe. Takes a while to get. These podcasts aren't massively long to put together. I have a rule where I try to do as little editing as I can on this. This is all off the top of my head. I have a couple of topics and then I just speak. And luckily I can kind of speak for England, as you can probably tell. But it does mean a lot, especially when I'm doing the more demanding type videos, if you subscribe and just show me some support. I also like communicating with people as well. So if you have anything, you want to talk about or from this video, then leave a comment and I'll get back to you. And if you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple or wherever you get your podcasts, give me a follow. It really does mean a lot. And if you're one of my mates as well, this would mean a lot. Even if you don't want to listen to me talking about nerdy camera stuff, just leave me on in the background. Help me get my my views up and my listening time up a little bit. It would really, really mean a lot. It's probably a shorter episode today. The key that I'm trying to go for at the moment is consistency. And this is quite similar to the last episode, but I still had some things on my head that I wanted to sort of like get off my chest. Next time we'll probably look at something completely different. I might do a list as well. I've got a bunch of ideas floating around. If you do enjoy today's episode, like it, follow me. It would really, really mean a lot. And I'll catch you next time. See ya.
The Pictorialist. Follow us on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.